Hoyney, welcome.
Hello, Kane. Hello, G. Pleasure to be here. Another jam-packed, busy Tuesday, isn't it?
Oh, yes. It's always busy on Tuesdays.
I reckon most Tuesdays there's been a tribunal situation on, and now there's a coach sacking. So it's no, it'd be good to just talk some pure footy.
Are you worried about the Swans?
No. They're going okay. They'll, I think that there's always going to be a stage during the year where they're going to have a little dip. And if your little dip is losing a game by a point and losing a game by 2 points and still playing reasonable footy, no, I'm not panicking about what's going on there at the moment at all.
Let's launch into your overall observations after round 17.
Yeah, so last year we, myself and Kingy did a bit of a deep dive into the last 4 weeks of the home and away season and heading into finals and where your game needs to be. And we've dubbed it the premiership runway. And what that is looking at the last 4 home and away games of your campaign. Your game historically needs to be in good shape heading into that last 4-week period before the home and away season to take off on the runway heading into finals. So so over a 20-year period, 17 of the 20 premiers have only lost one or haven't lost a game in their last 4 home and away matches for finals. So there's been 3 exceptions to the rule, and I know that we will get some texts coming in off this. Right? There's been 3 exceptions to the rule over a 20-year period. Geelong in 2009, who were 14-0, their season was already set up, and then they went 2-2 in their last 4 games. The Swans in 2012 went 1-3, lost 2 of those games by under a kick in that time. And then last year, the Pies, and the Pies went 2-2 in that time. And you two know on this show, I'm a believer in history, and I'll stick to history until history changes. Correct. So 17 of 20 have gone either 3-1 or 4-0. So people will hit me and they'll go, the Pies did it, and they went 2-2. Geelong in 22 went 4-0. Melbourne in 21 went 4-0. Richmond in 2020 went 4-0. Richmond in 2019 went 4-0. Right, so the Pies, well done to that. Geelong in 09, Swans in 12, and Collingwood in 23 all won the flag, but all won the flag by just on a kick. Right, so it's a small margin. It wasn't as if they flicked the switch and then just blitzed the competition come September. They didn't do that either of those 3. So in terms of that, so if you're looking at the competition right now, you've got 3 weeks to get your game.
So what are you doing? You're fastening your seatbelt, you're bringing your chair upright, you're stowing your tray table.
Yeah, you are ironing out any chinks in your game that you have right now and not thinking that we can flick a switch at round 21, round 22, round 23.
Who's got chinks? Everyone's got chinks.
Well, let's get into it. So the last 6 weeks, we always roll in off a 6-week period, right? So there are only 2 teams at the comp who don't have chinks in their game at the moment.
Can I just ask a question?
Go for it.
The Western Bulldogs, would they have made it 3 this time last week? Were they a team that didn't have chinks?
No.
I thought you had them in the premiership quartet profile, whatever you call it.
Yeah, no, they are. They're still top 6 points for and still top 6 points against, but we go a little bit deeper here on this show.
I thought their game was in reasonable order prior to last week.
No, I've got them on the list because there's a few things that are just starting to sip. I reckon 4 or 5 weeks ago, Kane, absolutely they were, but over the last couple of weeks, things are starting to sip.
Funny what happens when Bond struggles.
Never be sorry. I always like when you ask questions, Kane. It's always enjoyable. So the Swans, offensively, so with the footy, number 2, without the footy, number 1. No concerns whatsoever with the Swans, that's fine. And Carlton, number 3 with the footy, and number 4 without the footy. Right, so offensively, defensively, they're the only 2 that are top 6, both with the footy and without the footy. So defensively, these are the teams that are going well defensively at the moment. Geelong, Hawthorn, Gold Coast and Adelaide going well without the footy. Areas to improve offensively. The teams that are going well offensively, Brisbane, Collingwood, Freo, the Dogs, all need significant room in terms of what they're doing defensively. And then you've got big concerns around these 8. Port, Essendon, Melbourne, St Kilda, GWS, North, Richmond and West Coast are pretty obvious. Those 8 don't have either with the footy or without the footy ticked off at the moment. So you've got 3 weeks to go, and we'll have the same conversation heading into round 21. We'll bring it up. We'll have that data there to actually go into it. But right now, Sydney and Carlton, pretty obvious. And then there's 8 teams that have got one strength but need something else to be able to go with the other.
So Freo's attack is good.
Yeah.
It's there.
Yep.
And Freo have got the second least amount of scores kicked against them.
Yep.
So where do they need to improve outside what you told me last week, which was at stoppage?
So they need to improve behind the footy individually. And that's where I'm really interested to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. Now that Brennan Cox is back, and then Alex Pearce, I'm not even too sure how far Alex Pearce is away. Might be 2 or 3 weeks away. So behind the footy, I would expect that to improve, but we need to see it first and foremost with Pearce and Cox, who they haven't had as a fullback, centre-half back pairing, along with Luke Ryan. That automatically looks better, and you would assume that would improve. But again, we'll fast forward 3 weeks, and rather than assume, we'll actually be able to assess where that actually is.
Just on that one, JK sent that text through. So JK, I'm acknowledging your text. Hoyney just answered it on how he sees Fremantle. Tick you off.
Okay, for the Bombers text here, where are their chinks? Because
they are. So we're looking at top 6 as to be ticked off. They're 7th without the footy.
Right.
So they're marginally just behind in terms of what they're doing defensively.
And on an upwards tangent, or
no, just hovering. Just hovering. Yeah, so going okay. So they're just marginally behind.
So Jack,
offensively, they've got a little bit of work to go.
How are Essendon going with so many wins? If they're no good with or without the footy, says Jack, you just tick that off. So that
tick that off. Bomber Bormy asking exactly the same thing. Tick.
Yep. Yeah, so they're not. Yeah, so they're not too far behind in terms of what they're doing defensively. Just got a little bit of work to do. Offensively, I think they've actually spoken about that, and their connection going inside 50 looked a lot better on the weekend with a bit of a change to their starting 22-23 there as well.
Would you rather? So if we've only got 2 teams essentially that we can trust in all facets of their game, would you rather have the defensive aspect ticked off and in good order, or the offensive stuff?
No, give me the defense every day of the week.
Right.
So we've been tracking this stuff, for more than 10 years now, and not one premier has been top 6 without the footy. We've seen a few that have been top 6.
Okay, give us the top 6 defensively.
So top 6 defensively at the moment without the footy. So the Swans are number 1, Geelong are number 2, Hawthorn are number 3, Carlton are number 4, Gold Coast are number 5, and Adelaide number 6.
And Essendon 7.
Okay. So that's where the Brisbane one's really interesting, and we've spoken about this now for a couple of weeks. What they're doing offensively is ridiculous at the moment. Defensively, got some significant work to do to be able to, sort of get to where they need to be able to challenge potentially for a prelim final spot.
All right, so that's the overall observations of Premiership Runway. Get yourself in order in all aspects of your game in the next 3 weeks, or look out. You don't have much of a hope if history is a guide. Let's launch into your main talking points. You want to start with taggers, Hoyney? What are we doing here?
So I want to have a...
have you got an update for the corn medal?
No. So I just want to have a broader conversation, and I thought it was absolutely relevant given that we've got Kane here to have this broader conversation. So I reckon 6 to 8 weeks ago, it felt like to me that the industry was taggers are back, taggers are back, taggers are back, and we're seeing it everywhere. Well, you watch all 9 games on the weekend, there's only 2 tags on the weekend.
Yeah, the 2 I did, I was saying, where the taggers, they should be back.
Maybe 3 with Jack Graham going to Caleb Sarong.
Yeah.
Bedford at GWS, and then Chincotta at Carlton. And then Chincotta for the first time gets done by Canelio, and then the tag is no longer in play for the second half of the game because Canelio was able to get the job done against him like no one else has been able to do so far this year. And it just got me thinking that, and I don't know what's right or not, but is the tag there for more of a sugar hit, one-off sort of, bit of a surprise element, as opposed to the week by week by week by week?
Very good question.
You know what's coming, right? So just if I want to take us a couple of ways, right? So that was the first time on the weekend where James Jordan hasn't tagged in 8 weeks, right? And he looked a little bit confused 3 weeks ago against Adelaide, where he tried to get to Rankin and he tried to get to Dawson, and he looked confused for the first time. And then the second half, there's no tag. Windhager on the weekend didn't tag. We've seen him go up against Butters. We saw him go up against Miller. He did not tag against the Swans on the weekend. Willem Drew hasn't done it for quite a while now. So his last 2 weeks hasn't done it. We've seen him do it at times this year. Jared Berry, we all assumed that when we saw him go up against Bont, and then we saw him go up against someone else a couple of weeks ago that he was going to be their permanent tagger
and probably go to Dawson on the weekend, which he didn't do.
He hasn't tagged in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Finn McGuinness at the start of the year tags between rounds 2 to 6. As that mid sort of half forward role, hasn't been in the team at Hawthorn.
So you're saying it's a party trick, but not sustainable.
Well, then and this is why I'm interested in just getting Kane's thoughts, because I can't help but always get drawn to the 2013 grand final, Hawthorn Freo. And if you cast your minds back to it, remember reading the Hawthorn book post this grand final, and they said it was everyone in Australia knew that Ryan Crowley was going to Sam Mitchell grand final day. So they had 5 days, 6 days to prepare for it. And they orchestrated it in a way where it was, they needed Mitchell, the player, to sort of absorb that and understand that he's not necessarily going to be the man for the day, and rack up 25, 30, but orchestrated it in a way where you can, manipulate the stoppage. And Jordan Lewis is the one on grand final day who rips Fremantle apart at clearance, gets the game going for Hawthorn, and they take away Fremantle's strength. So I just wonder, Kane, whether or not you think that there's any merit in that, and whether or not, I'm sure that you've had experiences over your journey as well, where you were taken, or your opponent was almost sacrificing their role for the greater good of the team because you knew that it was coming.
I think it's an excellent conversation to have, and I think that some clubs are really smart about the way that they're doing it. Like Starcevic on Rankin was genius on the weekend. Like, did anyone see that coming? So I don't really care who it is, as long as you've got a plan for the opposition's best players. What Essendon did to Dacos wasn't a tag. It was just don't let this bloke stand alone at stoppage. And if you've got him for that 5-10 minute period, do your job. And they did it so well. So I'm not necessarily about, okay, let's just get a person to go to the best player every week. I think your point on the element of surprise, like the Bedford on Butters when that first happened, their minds were blown at Port Adelaide going, this guy's never done this. So that's why, like a Lockie Murphy, if he had started on Lockie Neal, then they go, oh, this is different. So I absolutely think their predictability doesn't work in time, and giving clubs time to do that. They're so smart now, they can manipulate that. But I hate seeing the Western Bulldogs just let Rosie and Butters and the like just do as they want with no pressure. So it doesn't have to be one person, but don't give the opposition's best players. If Butters and Rosie don't touch it for Port Adelaide, they don't win. And the Western Bulldogs rock up and let them have 18 and 15 in the first quarter and a goal. And you go, well, no wonder your game's over at quarter time. So I just think there needs to be more planning into making life difficult for the opposition, be that tagger, be it someone who's never done it before. Give us the element of surprise. But let's prepare and plan each week for the opposition that you're coming up against.
So are you surprised pre-game when you're listening to Ken? I'm not sure, if you heard Ken's comments pre-game on Fox when he, basically said that we're going to go head-to-head with their midfield and we're going to back ourselves in. And I thought, I was excited by that, just to actually see.
It's like a state of origin.
Yeah, because it's, like as you just said then, Kane, like it's a risk. I would have thought to let Bontempelli and Treloar and Libba go, but then your midfield group just completely obliterates theirs and then just denies Bont and Libba in particular real impact. Were you surprised by that?
A couple of weeks ago, Brisbane torched them when they tried to do the same thing.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Plus 55 from stoppage and Lockie Neal on an absolute tear. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I think if you looked closely at Connor Rosie's game, I thought he took a lot of responsibility for Bontempelli at stoppage. So maybe they weren't. Maybe it just wasn't all out head-to-head. Maybe it was right, Connor, you started him, but then as soon as it plays out, you use your speed to get away. It's a good topic, and I think it's going to be fascinating to watch in the next 7 weeks as we lead up to the finals. But let's not get bogged down on that. Let's move on to the Pies and how you see them, Hoyney.
Yeah, so and I said, 6 weeks ago, I kept saying this, that, their profile at about round, 10 or 11 when you were away, Gene, and it was myself and Kane, that their profile was looking as good, if not better, than what it was the previous campaign. But, the reality is now over the last 6 weeks, defensively is clearly their issue at the moment. And, they are the second easiest team in the competition to be able to turn possession into scores against. And the most concerning element at the moment is that when they do turn the footy over, Collingwood, there's no easier team to punish on the way back. So, almost 1 in 4 of their turnovers are actually getting, sort of punished against on the scoreboard. Compare that to Carlton, where it's 1 in 6 of their turnovers are actually getting punished against. So, and just watching it on the weekend, it just looked like to me that, there was a little bit of a change in sort of strategy with their ball movement game. And I just wonder whether or not that was to actually try and protect this vulnerability behind the footy. So often under Craig McRae, we've seen a lot of kick long, go down the line, forward handball, no uncontested marks. The ball's in motion, more often than not in their games than anyone else across the competition. But we didn't see that on the weekend against Essendon. We saw far less long kicking on the weekend. We saw less meterage by hands on the weekend, and we saw more uncontested marking. And to me, straight away, just watching that going, is that just to protect this back group? And, I think when you're watching, this is why, and we just, sort of touched on with Collingwood before, they're still going to have a game over the next 4 or 5 weeks where they're going to be dangerous, because what they're doing offensively at the moment is still top 4, top 5 in the competition. Their ability to be able to move it, their forward 50 is actually functioning okay. Their accuracy in front of goal is actually going okay. But it's just defensively at the moment with this profile, like it's not a profile that's going to be challenging for a finals berth. And I just wonder whether or not, Craig McRae mentioned on SEN yesterday that they had a bit of a sit down. And I just want to see Friday night, are we going to see more of that chaotic Collingwood, the fast Collingwood, the long down the line, the go forward, the handball by metres gained, the wave running that we've seen from 2.5 years, and just almost park the defensive stuff to one side and more really focus in on the asset that you've got. A little bit of what Brisbane are doing at the moment. Yes, Brisbane's defensive stuff isn't rock solid, but what they're doing offensively is the reason why they've won 5 in a row. So to almost just get yourself going more so than actually worrying too much about the negative. That's what, I'll be interested to see what happens with Collingwood on Friday night.
If they go super quick, given Collingwood's lack of speed on a number of players through the middle or lack of want to run defensively, they open themselves up
exactly
to the rebound. And I suspect it's in some parts that's what Chris Fagan will be thinking with
Chris Scott.
No, Chris Fagan.
Chris
moving
Fagan
the ball quickly, moving it really quickly, and then sometimes you have a bad turnover. It's tough to get back and organise.
Yeah, but I just think with Collingwood Friday night, just get your absolute aggression back and actually don't try and compromise what is your absolute strength. We didn't see that on Friday night. Let's get it back on Friday night and really challenge Geelong in what could be an interesting game.
All right, that was the Pies. Let's move on to the Saints. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I've been asked this question about St Kilda for the last 48 hours. What did they change? How did they unlock their stodginess, and they played quicker and all this sort of stuff? And it's a frustrating sort of question that's getting asked because we've spoken about on this show throughout the year. Their ability to be able to move the ball from one end of the ground to the other is top 6. Their ability to be able to move it from that half-back area to inside 50 is top 3 in the competition. They go and play on from a mark the second most of any team in the competition.
So the eye's been lying all these times.
And their ability to be able to score from their back half, Sydney 1, Carlton 2, St Kilda 3, Geelong 4.
Right.
They're in a pretty good group.
So why have they got a reputation of being stodgy ball movers?
Their connection going inside 50 is the issue that has been there all year. They have been 14th for connecting going inside 50, and their accuracy is 17th in the competition. Versus Sydney on the weekend, their worst ball movement game of the year.
Was it?
Yep.
And yet
they scored 5 times.
And yet the commentary was that the ball
from their
movement
defensive
was magnificent.
Half. They scored 5 times, right?
Yep.
They had 41 entries and they converted 19 of them into a score. Their accuracy is 17th. They kicked 13-6 on the weekend against Sydney. They converted 13 goals from 22 attempts on the weekend. And their ability to be able to score off their forward half work was their best of the year. It had nothing to do with them going quicker. It had nothing to do with them taking more corridor. It had nothing to do with their ball movement game. It had their ability to be able to connect inside 50 and then take their chances in front of goal.
Do they go a lot faster in second halves, often when they have a low-scoring first half and they're behind and they need to chase the game? It's a question you probably don't have the stats in front of you. It's a
very good question, Kane, because one of our guys raised this morning when we were just doing a bit of an overview of the round, and I didn't actually know this. You probably knew this, Kane and G, but I think they've trailed at halftime 12 times or 11 times, 12 times or something this year. I didn't know that. But then their ability to be able to come back and score more in the second half, is evident and is there to see. So it is absolutely a legitimate and fair question on that. So I think you've.
I don't believe you didn't know that, Hoyney. You don't know.
No. I put my hand up. I did not. No. I put my hand up. I did not know that.
Can I just ask the impact of an individual in what you're talking about? Because I watched the game again today, that particular game, and the boy Filippo, he hit more targets than most St Kilda players have hit inside 40-50 collectively this season. He went bang, bang, bang. And it made a huge impact.
Yeah, no, he was. He still made a couple of mistakes late.
He made some bad ones late.
Yeah, but I think overall for him to, have the 10 score involvements, and I think his impact on the game overall was, it was a really strong performance. But I still think that there's areas of his game that he can improve upon, which is fine. That's okay. He's only second year player, but for him to play permanent midfield time, or largely permanent midfield time and do that, they've been crying out for someone like that.
A lot of questions coming through, which we will park and we'll get to some of those, but make them good. Is Sheezel still in your All-Australian team, Hoyney, says Brett? I guess
Walk
the
up.
answer to that
Walk up. I'll speak to Kane over the next 7 weeks. We'll get him in.
What he did on the weekend again. All right, guess who? What's the clue?
Yeah, last 6 weeks, who has the number one defensive 50 in the competition last 6 weeks?
Who has the number one defensive 50 in the competition in the last 6 weeks? 0433 98 11 16. And a lot of love for North Melbourne as far as I can read it. There's a bit of love for Fremantle off the text. Gerard, where was your mind headed
Well,
towards?
it's a similar question towards the one that we had last week, which I answered North Melbourne, so I'm going to stick with the Kangaroos.
I was going to stick with the Kangaroos as well, Hoyney.
Love when you two are on the same page and you get it right as well.
Oh, wow.
So well done. Congratulations to the two of you. That's, I'm sure that's one of your greatest achievements.
To me how this has turned around from a side that was conceding 100 points 12 weeks in a row, was it? Essentially from round 1 to 12,
every
112 or something on average to where it sits now, where they are the best defensive 50 in the comp in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, so I think there's two parts to this. I think one is based off what the midfield group is doing at the moment, so their ability to be able to win contests more often than not, but then their ability to be able to then control possession off the back of that. So for the first 5, 6, 7 weeks in particular, and we spoken about it on this show, they want to be so aggressive with ball in hand and to just take corridor and just take these ridiculous options on. When it came off, it looked good, and we saw a couple of games, that first 45 minutes against Freo in round 2 where they got to 5 goals in front and it looked superb, and against Carlton at times they were good, and and in a few games early on it came off, but it gave their defensive group absolutely no chance to be able to compete. So they've been able to change that. So now, over the last 6 weeks, their uncontested marking game in terms of differentials is the third best in the competition. And their disposal differential over the last 6 weeks is the second best in the competition. So they're possessing the ball. And then behind the footy, that then gives you a chance to be able to compete as a defensive group. So on top of that, I just want to give 2 shout-outs defensively. Clearly one to Charlie Compton. So then they've been able to bring in one of the game's best interceptors over the last 3 months.
Another forward that's gone back.
Yeah, so that's a huge tick. And I just want to give Aiden Core a bit of a shout out as well. So I reckon they tried Toby Pink early on in the year. They tried Dawson early on in the year as their main key defenders. They've now, I think, just kept it really simple. Charlie Compton is your centre half back, and Aiden Core is the one who is taking on the best opposition key forwards over the last period of time. So he's had Waterman, Van Rooyen, Norton, Max King, Ben King in this period, and has only conceded more than 2, and hasn't conceded more than 2 goals in this time. And his last 8 one-on-one contests, he's only lost once.
Wow.
In his last 8 one-on-one. So just a bit of a shout out. Yeah, so just a bit of a shout out to what he's been able to do behind the footy, But it's just given him more of a chance in terms of what's actually happening up the ground, a midfield group who's winning their fair share of footy, but then equally as important, a change in strategy, less aggression. And I think we can all agree that without being disrespectful, we look at the North defensive 50 group and that is their weakness on the ground. So give yourself a chance with how you're actually playing as opposed to just being pure all-out aggression with ball in hand.
Interesting text coming through from Ipswich. Does Champion Data have an official position on the red card? Does it impact on the numbers?
I am not
He
getting
doesn't
involved
go into those
in
areas.
that. No, I'm not getting involved in that, Gerard. I will stick to the data and what the data
What's
actually
the data
says.
telling you?
The data tells us to move on to the next question.
Okay.
Well, there's a next question revolves around your man who you love, Harry Sheezel, and rightly so. Is what Sheezel is doing now compared to Nick Dacos, what he was doing at the same stage of his career? Dacos has obviously had 100 times the exposure, but it seems Sheezel is putting together a very special year without the same fanfare. Which you've already
You answered that last
Yeah, I
week,
think
2
you
weeks
guys
ago.
know where I sit on this.
Yeah.
I mean, Sheezel is...
Gerard, I got copped a bit of flack because we posted that video online, and the North. I just sort of said, doesn't capture my attention like Dacos does. Do you watch Harry Sheezel, Gerard, and think he's as good as Nick Dacos? If you had no stats, if you're watching the game for the first time, who's a better footballer?
Well, I think visually, Dacos is a better footballer. I understand what you said at that particular time.
Yeah, so did I.
you
Totally
disagree.
understand.
But there's a lot of players out there. There's a lot of players out there that are much better players with the data than your eye, and we know the eye tells lies.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Kane was saying. I didn't think what you're saying was wrong at all. And I think we're all starting to appreciate what he does, but I think he, for a fair while was a player that you need to go back and watch him replay to really appreciate what he does. He probably doesn't have the speed and explosion as what Nick does, but a fair bit of what he does is a little bit of Pendlebury like, just his composure with ball in hand and to get out of traffic without having that speed is it's just ridiculous.
Speaking
what
of the
he's doing.
Kangaroos, are we moving? Oh no, we got Melbourne.
Gold Coast.
Gold Coast first.
Gold Coast. So you two know where I sit on this, and the reality is after Saturday.
Don't swear.
I won't swear. You can't defend. You can't defend that performance on the weekend, and you just got to cop where you sit on that. I'm not wavering in terms of where they sit longer term, but right now, I mean, that was clearly a disappointing performance on the weekend and backs up a couple of really disappointing away matches that they've been able to put in. So I'm more looking at the bigger picture moving forward with Gold Coast, and they're doing, and people will say, have they changed? Well, they have changed, and they're doing a lot right at the moment. This is the season. This isn't just a 4-6 week period. This is the season. So they are the second hardest team in the competition to turn possession into scores against. They move the footy from one end of the ground to the other, the second best in the competition. And their ability to be able to score off turnovers is the fourth best in the competition. Right now, and it was just there for everyone to see on the weekend, their ability to connect going inside 50 is 17th in the competition. 62 entries on the weekend to generate 23 scores.
Are you blaming the kickers or the receivers?
I just want to talk about the individual sort of discussion, because we've had this conversation about Melbourne for a number of years, right? And then the conversation, fairly enough, has been on Petrarca and Oliver. As good as they are, they're blasters going inside 50. Their ability to connect with their forwards going inside 50 has been up there with the worst in the competition. Noah Anderson does a lot right. Noah Anderson's a very good footballer.
There's a butt coming, Gerard.
There's a
He
problem.
is the seventh worst kick going inside 50 of any player in the competition. Rao and Flanders are inside the top 25 worst kicks going inside 50 in the competition. Rao, Anderson, Flanders, we all pump them up, we all give them praise, and that's fair enough. But they have this issue in their game to be able to connect going inside forward 50. And I would absolutely take it to the bank that would be Damien Hardwick and Gold Coast number one frustration at the moment. We generate almost 60 entries a week, but we have a midfield group at the moment that I think is just too consumed about getting it inside 50 as opposed to caring inside 50. And I know that this guy is at the end, but you always just throw that, okay, why are Gold Coast going after Dusty? Why would they be going after Dusty? Dusty's last 12 months, so things are starting to come to the end for Dusty, understandably. He is still a top 25 kick going inside 50 in the competition. So people will ask you, should they be going after him or not? Yeah, he's not there to win a Norm Smith. He's not there to win a BNF. But could he fix what is the number one concern and the number one frustration with Gold Coast at the moment?
Next week,
this midfield group can't do it.
I want you, not your top 10 best players, I want your top 10 best kicks inside 50 if you can.
It's done. Will one of them be Rivers, who's single-handedly trying to change the Demons' entry?
Well, let's get on to Melbourne right now.
I like it.
Let's get on to Melbourne right now, because there's been a few texts that have come through and appreciate that. So there's been a few texts around Trent Rivers and Caleb Windsor, and they're the two that I want to talk about with Melbourne at the moment. So we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that Rivers is 3 of his 4 years where he's actually played enough footy to qualify for an overall competition rating. And he's been a top 100 player in the competition, which is a fantastic achievement given that he's been an 18, 19 and 21-year-old in those 3 seasons. We just mentioned about Petrarca and Oliver and their concerns over a large period now to be able to connect going inside 50 and their ball use. His ability to be able to hit a target all over the ground is the 5th best of any player.
Pick 32 in the draft.
In the competition. I heard you went on about that before in your editorial. So for him then to be able to go into this midfield group, and his first game as a midfielder, he was the 2nd highest rated player on the ground. And then on the weekend, he was the 4th highest rated player on the ground. So, and without being harsh, without Max now, the reality is Melbourne are going into their next 2 games without their 2 best players in their 2 most important games of the year. So they're up against it, right? But if I'm a Melbourne supporter, if I can finish this year's campaign knowing that we have finally potentially found a midfielder with a point of difference, with elite ball use, to be able to complement what we know Viney does, what we know Petrarca does, what we know Oliver does, and then be able to sort of potentially take further advantage of that heading into a 2025 campaign. Big tick. And then the other one for me...
He's angry for Armadale's going to love hearing that.
And then the other one for me, I'm not sure what you think, Kane and Gerard, on this. I just wonder whether or not this will be the only year that we see Caleb Windsor playing permanent wing time.
Come back inside.
Yeah, I don't know if he'll become a permanent centre bounce midfielder, but even just to become a little bit of what Errol Goulden is in terms of still maybe being a 50 to 60% winger, but then having the ability to go in for 10 to 15 centre bounces.
Josh Jacobs does that to a degree.
Because I don't know what you guys think. He hasn't attended a centre bounce this year. I'm not. He's 18, but I just wonder over the next 6-7 weeks whether or not he could be thrown in there, because his ability to be able to win the footy and his impact through his defensive actions are top 10 for his position in the competition, which is a fantastic achievement for an 18-year-old. I just wonder if he's got the attributes, Kane. I'm not sure what you think.
Is he a rising star?
I was going to ask update on the rising star race, Hoyney, from your point of view.
No, it'll still be Wardlaw for me. Okay. Wardlaw, Dempsey, and then this guy at the moment. But I don't know where you see Kane with Windsor. I'm not sure.
I saw him live on the weekend. I think I gave him 2 of the 3 votes. Rivers was the best player on the ground. I thought he's so clean.
Isn't he?
His ability to be clean at ground level and then get outside of congestion. The first time I saw him train, I thought this is next Craig Bradley. He's just a beautiful mover. Like those players that just look good. So yeah,
Angry's just texting Kane. He's happy for the first time.
If he can be a centre forward player, Hoyney, and do some damage there, we saw how clever he can be around goal as well. That goal he kicked in the first quarter. So I love him. I think it was an excellent pick, and the Demons have got a ripper. So I do like that. And McKerch is the other one. When he's ready to go centre forward, look out. And I'm happy for him to sit across half back for the rest of the year, but I don't want to see him playing half back for too much longer, because the upside there is going to be frightening. All right, let's move on to the Western Bulldogs.
Yeah, I mean, clearly their most disappointing performance of the year, and it was a disaster no matter where you actually look at it. So I just want to take this in a couple of different angles, and you asked before, Kane, whether or not they would have been sort of sitting in that nice sweet spot on the runway heading into the last 4 weeks of the year. The reality is now, over a 6-week period, their defensive stuff is starting to drop, and is starting to drop really quickly. So between round 6 to 11, their defensive work without the footy was 7th in the comp. over the last 6 weeks now, it's the 4th worst defensive profile in the competition.
Are you fingering midfield or are you fingering defence?
No, I'm a bit of everything. So I feel like we've spoken at length their inability to be able to win the ball back off the opposition.
For years.
So that is now, between the arcs over the last 6 weeks, there's no team who wins it back less than what the Dogs do. So then they're allowing the opposition to move it and then generate an entry.
Are they not pressing up high enough?
And then when they actually do generate an inside 50 against the Dogs, they are now, again, the 4th easiest team in the comp to score against when the ball goes in. So these are issues that we've assigned with the Dogs for a long time. And then you go and have a look at their list, and I know that's an interesting, sort of conversation with where you take it, Kane, and your thoughts on it. But just having a look at our ratings, and we mentioned Carlton and we mentioned Essendon in particular. They have a large number of players that sit between the 30 to 60 ranking, if you like, which makes them just such a balanced team. Yep. The Dogs have 5 players inside the top 50 in the comp. Huge tick. Then their 6th best player is sitting at 130th in the comp.
Where's Hugo Hagen sitting right now?
Oh, he's sitting in the 200s.
Yeah.
Because he's only got one hand.
He's miles away.
That's where it can be a bit deceptive because I look at the list and I go, gee, this is stacked. But then you tell me, and I'm agreeing with you that that's where he deserves to sit right now. And I'm going, well, why is that? Because why are they not able to get what should be a top 10 key forward in the game or a top 10 key position forward in the game, if that's the way you want to class him, potential sitting probably not in the top 30 key forwards. And so that's why I question as well the development of some of these players at the club.
And the other one, just for me, just before we move on from the Dogs, is there's a lot of talk about Tim English, and understandably, right? But these are his rankings across his career: 256, 225, 191, didn't qualify, didn't play enough minutes. 17th in 2023, fantastic, All-Australian year, and now this year 167th. So 1 year out of 6 have we seen him inside the top 160 players in the competition. Yeah. I just wonder how careful that they're going to be. When it comes to this contract.
Very careful, and I think maybe some others are cooling on him. Fly through who the coach has missed, Hoyney.
Yeah, Tom Power, highest rated player on the ground for North Melbourne v Gold Coast, didn't get a vote. That was his.
Did he play more midfield?
Yeah, so that was his best game since round 3. Really balanced game that he had. Mark Blitzarves on the weekend, didn't get a vote. 5th highest rated player. Interested to see his role on the weekend. 75% wing time.
Do they beat Collingwood?
I think they do, but Collingwood is still dangerous, as we said. You'll love this one, Kane. Luke Jackson, 2nd highest rated player on the ground, didn't get a vote from the coaches. Career high pressure game on the weekend for Luke Jackson, so well done there.
Darcy went off, or I think it was.
We'll move on from that one. Alex Neil-Bullen, 3rd highest rated player on the ground, didn't get a vote. 4th best game for his season, 20 disposals, 9 score involvements, having a really good year actually. And this bloke continues to fly under the radar. 3rd highest rated player on the ground, Jack Sinclair, didn't get a vote on the weekend.
Why wasn't Jordan put on a Jack Sinclair?
He played the role. He played the CBD role.
He did.
On the weekend. 21 centre bounces, but then went behind the ball. 21 of his 28 behind the footy. So surprised why James Jordan did not go to him.
Who was your most damaging player of the round?
Yeah, hard to go past Zach Merritt on the weekend. Clearly the most damaging player of the round. His ball use was clearly the best of any player for the round. From a ball-winning perspective, Kieran Briggs had the most impact of any player for the round. And then the defensive actions, this one's an important one for Brisbane. Jack Payne had the most impact of any player for the round. So he's an important piece in that defensive puzzle to get that going.
And Merritt gets some more love. He's your gem of the week.
Yeah, got to give him a bit of love. There's some supporters think I hate Zach Merritt, which is just completely untrue. That was the 3rd highest rated game by any Bomber since our ratings came into play 15 years ago. Darcy Parish and Jake Stringer had better games in 2021.
Okay.
And then just to give another gem as well to the Giants. So no team has had a pressure rating in a quarter of 230 or greater. The Giants did it twice against Carlton in quarter 2 and quarter 3. So well done there.
They were young. Dermot gave me the...
And then just before I finish, just to give a bit of love to Connor Rosie as well. One on the Connor on the weekend. He had a fantastic game. So well done.
Bit of feedback.
Well done, Connor.
I didn't keep those receipts. I wasn't going to bring it up. I was not going to bring that up. You brought it up. Outstanding as always, Hoyney.